Okay, I'm starting the part 3 video of the process of getting this 1948 Admiral TV going. I've inventoried all the capacitors and I'm going to replace all the wax capacitors, this electrolytic here, these electrolytics down here. The only capacitors I'm not replacing are any of these ceramic ones and mica ones, at least not yet. I'll see how those are once I get this set working better with new capacitors. I'm pretty sure the vertical hasn't been working because I checked the vertical output transformer and the yoke. There's continuity there, so I'm pretty sure. It's very rare that that's a problem. Although it has happened that the vertical output transformer or the yoke opens up. But I'm pretty sure the vertical's not working because of leaky wax capacitors in all these circuits. Here's the vertical circuits are down here. This one, if you notice, is a replacement. These are original. Now this capacitor here, that's a 0.05 at 600 volts. That thing, the reason it's loose on one side is this was just tacked on there, and it's actually in parallel with the same value capacitor right here. So this is in parallel with that, so why would somebody parallel up another capacitor to a wax? Mostly what happens, these rarely open. Wax capacitors usually just leak. If they don't downright short, but they leak. So I don't understand what the idea of this was. The other person who had worked on it, however, replaced these power resistors plus the one in the focusing pot. And I'm going to replace some of these 2-watt resistors because they're way out of value. I haven't checked every resistor in here yet, but I'm going to replace the way out of spec 2-watt resistors right off the bat. So that'll be my next phase on this. I'll be continuing on with this part 3 video until I've got all the capacitors in it, and I'll be testing the set to see how it works with new caps in it. I've recapped the power supply, and I've already run it up slowly with the variac, or the variable power supply, and it works fine. I still have just a vertical, or rather a horizontal line on the screen on the CRT, but that's something else I need to deal with. Of course, nothing's been done in the chassis. I've replaced 0 capacitors. One of the things I want to do is this thing that was just tacked in, it's one end came loose, is in parallel with another, I believe this capacitor right here that's in the vertical circuit. So what I may do is replace just a few capacitors that are associated with the vertical circuit. I'll pick through the resistors and stuff, see if I can find anything open or any shorted capacitors. I've already tested the vertical oscillator tube and the vertical output. All that seems okay. There are, of course, other things. If you look at this capacitor up here, obviously needs to be replaced. One end of it's actually blowing out. These will all be replaced. But the main thing that I want to test right now is I want to put full AC power on this thing to see if I get flashover in the 5U4 rectifier. Bob Anderson had that issue, and I believe he solved the problem with a thermistor. But I want to see if I get it on my power supply, so I'm going to turn the lights out and I'm going to give it full power and look to see if I get flashover. Okay, I'm looking right at the 5U4 rectifier, so here goes power. And I did not see a flashover. I don't know why that is, and I don't know why he had that problem with his power supply. Of course, I will watch it more than once just to make sure it does not flash over. But this thing is working. These capacitors, of course, are totally out of the circuit now. And on the front, we still get a horizontal line, but no vertical deflection. So, I'll have to see what I can see with that. Picture tube is fairly weak. I hope it gives me a decent enough picture at least to demonstrate the set. Okay, this capacitor here was tacked on in parallel with this capacitor here. Both are 0.05s. It's a 0.05 to ground, but that has nothing to do with the vertical circuit at all. It's actually in the horizontal oscillator AFC circuit. So in the vertical end of it, here's the vertical integrator, and I can't really test the capacitors in there, but I can test the resistors. And from ground all the way into pin 4 of the vertical oscillator tube, I should have 54K. So if I attach on pin 4, there's 54.5K. I don't know how the capacitors are, but at least I know the resistors are good from one end to the other. So here's something really strange that I can't figure out why something like this was done. Here is a 0.05 mic capacitor, and one end of it, now this is obviously something that some other technician had installed. This capacitor is newer. It's been put in. Now this capacitor goes to pin 3 and 4 of the vertical output tube. That would be the 6SN7, I believe. It's a vertical output tube, anyways. And pin 3 and 4 go to one end of the primary of the vertical output transformer. And by the way, I've thoroughly checked this transformer yoke, and I know that the transformer is not open and the vertical yoke is not open. So this lead right here goes to pin 3 and 4 of the vertical output tube. But here is this 0.05 capacitor attached to pin 3 and 4, and the other end of it goes right to the wiper of the brightness control, which is here. I don't understand that. Why would somebody do that? It's not in the circuit. The schematic doesn't show it. But there it is. I've been looking at it and looking at it and looking at it to say, well, maybe I'm not seeing it right, or I'm making a mistake. But clearly, from what I can see from looking at the schematic, why would there be a 0.05 mic capacitor connected to the output of the vertical output tube, pin 3 and 4 of the 6, I believe I got that right, 6SN7. Boy, I sure need glasses. Yeah, 6SN7. Okay. Pin 3 and 4. Here, 0.05 connected to pin 3 and 4. Attaches right here, and here is the center wiper of the brightness control. Why would somebody do that? Was that a mistake that somebody made? So the thing I need to do is I need to clip that capacitor out of the circuit. I clipped that capacitor out, and of course there still is no vertical deflection, but that capacitor is clearly why that was in there. It didn't belong there. It had, I can't see why in the circuit that would be wired in like that. So I clipped it out, and I'm still seeing if I can find something obvious that makes the vertical circuit not work. Okay, this resistor right here is supposed to be a 1.2 meg, but it's actually over 4, it's 4 point something meg. It goes from pin 2 of the vertical oscillator tube, and it goes right to the wiper of the height control, which is right here. So I don't think that's the problem, but that resistor has to be replaced because it's way out of spec, far more than 10% out. 4 point something meg instead of 1.2 megs. So that's a starting point that I have to work on there. Of course, these capacitors all could be bad. I haven't really gotten into that. I'm mostly just checking for shorts and resistors that are nearly open. So I'm still working on the circuit. Oh, and by the way, what I don't hear is I don't hear the vertical circuit actually working, although I don't know that I can hear it, but you know, other people who restore these sets like Shango 66, he can hear the vertical circuit working really well, and if he gets his microphone close to it, you could hear it clicking. It's kind of a buzzing sound, but I don't hear that, so I don't think the oscillator is actually working at all. Okay, my capacitance tester for electrolytic capacitors has its limitation, but this is C4. It's a 3-section 20-20-60 capacitor, all related in the vertical circuit. So this should be the 60. Reads high. This would be a replaced, of course. Here's a 20. This thing obviously has to count one way or the other. Here's the other 20. So I would say that capacitor is not an issue. There's one more can that I have to check related to the vertical circuit. And here is C5, which is 20, 10, and 50. So let's see, here's the 50. Oh, I got the meter set wrong. Silly me. There we go. Let me short it first. Zero it. Okay, this should be 50. Oh, come on, don't do this to me. Like I say, this is not the best meter for testing electrolytics, but it works somewhat. There's 50, 53, 51. So the 50 is pretty close to right on. This should be the 10. Well, get on there. Here it measures 13. Let me lower my range. And 10.2. This one should be 20. A little low, 18. So I don't think so I don't think these electrolytic cans are the problem with my vertical. I don't think they are the problem. At least that's what it seems like. So the next step is any of these wax capacitors. So I think I'm going to probably replace a couple resistors and all of the wax capacitors in those circuits to see what I get. So before I go much farther, I do need to check voltages on the pins of the vertical output and the vertical oscillator tubes, just to see if I've got voltages there at all, because you know, because the circuit is not working, I would say that there's probably not a voltage present. There may be a resistor open somewhere that I don't see. I've checked these big power resistors and they are not open, but I'm going to check voltages on the tubes now. So anyways, there's my vertical deflection. Actually, what the problem was, I went through a lot of trouble checking voltages on tubes, and the problem was there's a problem in the height pot. The pot itself may be bad, course, we've only got a partial picture there, but anyways, I do have vertical deflection now. So, and as you can see, the picture is, yes, quite dim. To demonstrate this set way off in the future, I'll probably have to use a brightener on this tube. I don't have one on it now, but anyways, I'm going to start replacing parts in the chassis, and I'll see how I can get it from that point on. That'll come up in the next part on this video.